going to introduce our human resource guest speakers. First, I'm going to introduce Emily, who's going to introduce her colleagues. So Emily is the human resource director at Target. And Emily, I want to pass the ball to you.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks, Mamadi. Appreciate it. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, good. Okay, great. I'm seeing some nods. Thank you all so much for having us today. I really appreciate the connection that Leah was able to bring and the variety of friends and HR professionals that are joining today. It looks like we have about 30 people on the call, and around 10 of those are actually HR advisors from a variety of companies across the Twin Cities. And otherwise, we've got a wide variety of backgrounds and folks here today. So for the majority of the time, we'll be doing just some one-on-one or two-on-one counsel on actual resumes and questions that you might have or that partnership that you're looking for. But we'll spend the first part of the time kind of going through a little bit of content too. Ideally, this would be in person and we'd be talking and interacting, and we're just not. And so we're going to make it as interactive, there's the word I'm looking for. And honestly, less presentation-y as possible. And so please feel free to unmute and ask a question, interrupt. I will not be able to see the chat super well while I'm presenting. So if everybody else could keep an eye on the chat and just stop me with questions that come in that way too, that works great. So with some of that out of the way, I will let folks introduce themselves. Like Mamadi said, I'm Emily Fritz. I work at Target. I've been at Target for most of my professional career, the first half in the business, in the merchandising and buying side of our world at Target, and then the latter half in HR, largely in recruiting, and now as an HR business partner supporting our merchandising team. So I live in Medina, which is far west of Minneapolis. The tornado came our way as well last night. We hunkered down in the basement. But really just happy to be here with you today. Why don't I'll just pass it along. I'll let folks know who is going next so that we don't all try to talk at once. But Kelly, I can see you on my screen, so why don't you go quick with an introduction if that works.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kelly Lostness, and I am in talent acquisition and an HR business partner at LubeTech, which is headquartered in Golden Valley, Minnesota. I have about 10 years of HR experience and live in Woodbury, Minnesota, so on the far east side, and I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you. Mary, you're next.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Mary Pleasted. I'm an HR director at Zynga. It's a mobile gaming company based in San Francisco, so that's actually where I am. I'm from Minneapolis. I was at Target for about 15 years until just recently. So Minneapolis is home for me and a community that I care a lot about. So when Emily was looking for helpers, I was happy to jump in. Yeah, so I'm in San Francisco. I'm on the West Coast. It's early here.
No tornadoes for you last night.
No tornadoes here, but it's really hot.
Good. Darielle?
Oops. Hey everyone, my name is Darielle Gangler-Hansen. I'm a recruiter at Target. So I've been a recruiter for about 6 years and then in HR for about 8. So happy to lend some advice today.
Thank you. And Darielle is the creator of our deck. So extra thanks for that wonderful content that we're going to show in a little bit. Meredith, you're next.
Hi everyone, good morning. My name is Meredith Swanson. I am an HR at Target. I've been with Target for about 8 years, but prior to joining the organization, spent 7 years in recruitment on the agency side. So I've had the opportunity to work for many companies supporting hiring for them and then come in-house. So number of years within the talent acquisition and HR space, and happy to be here this morning.
Thank you. Tracy? And Tracy has a visitor, I see. That's fun. Oh, maybe you want somebody else to go. Sorry. It's like Tracy's computer doesn't want to unmute. Uni, do you want to go? And then we'll come.
Here I go.
There,
Sorry,
she got
here I
it.
am.
Okay,
Sorry.
go for it, Tracy.
Tracy, I'm all sorry about that. Yes, my 5-year-old fell off of her bike. My husband is tending to her, so little Miles is here with me for a few minutes.
Totally
this is
fine.
just real life. I have 15 years of talent experience in the last 7 in a leadership role with Ecolab, and I live centrally here on your 50th in France. So excited to meet all of you and excited to help out today.
Thank you. Wonderful. Uni?
Hi, my name is Uni Lee. I'm a HR talent analytics analyst. I know that's a mouthful, at Target. Prior to that, I was in talent acquisition, talent sourcer for campus recruiting, supporting the Rails team. And prior to that, I was a technical recruiter at a consulting firm. So a few years of recruiting experience there, and I'm happy to be here. And currently, I live downtown Minneapolis. So it went through, but we were all fine in the concrete jungle here. So
great. Wonderful. Glad to hear it. Kaylin?
Hi everyone, I'm Kaylin Wordish. I have been with Target for about 14 years. I lead our talent management space. So I have been in HR my entire career on the benefit side, and then I spent many years as an HR business partner before coming into my current space, which is talent management. I live in Chanhassen, so we were like right in the path, but we had left our kids with a babysitter, so just feeling like a terrible mother last night, hearing about them hunkering.
Everyone's okay though, right?
Everything was fine. All is
good. Wonderful. Glad to hear it. Kelsey.
Hi, I'm Kelsey Weekman. I'm glad to be here, frankly. So I am currently in the business at Target, but had spent about the first 10 years of my career in HR, and now I'm in supply chain at Target. So hoping to share some insights on both sides of the world. Side note, I also live in Medina and had no idea of this tornado. So I'm actually feeling like the worst person here.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, last but not least, Sidra.
Hi, good morning. I'm Sidra Khan, and I'm an HR business partner at Target. I've been with the company 2 years in July, and prior to that, I was with a manufacturing company, a technology company. I've been in HR for about 10 years, and I spent time in HR technology, operations, recruiting, and happy to be meeting with all of you this morning.
Wonderful. Thanks, everybody, for joining. And it may feel like this session is sponsored by Target. It is, in fact, not. Just a bunch of folks who have a variety of backgrounds and hopefully a really valuable collection of experiences to advise everybody on the call from a lot of different angles. So thank you to everybody for being here today. I am going to attempt to share the right screen with you now. Let me know if you can see it.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so we'll just dive right in. I want to leave a good amount of time, like I mentioned, for interactive questions throughout the way, but also for the one-on-one or two-on-one, etc. Counseling towards the end. So we'll dive right in. I would like to start with kind of encouraging folks to come off mute or enter in the chat. What are you most curious about today so that we can focus the content and guidance and really any counsel that we have to offer on that? Any specific questions or components of resume or job search that would be most valuable, and then anything you really want to take away. Does any brave soul want to come off mute and start?
I have a question.
Speak?
Oh
yeah, go ahead, Behab. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Hi guys, my name is Bilha. I am the Marketing and Communications Director for WeNetworkNow. I don't know why I say that. Anyways, what I'm most curious about today is how we need to structure our resumes. I think that's the one thing that really concerns me when it comes to resume. So just like the structure, what do you start with? What does it matter which what industry you are getting into, the company, the role, and all of that?
Wonderful. That's a great question, and we have a good amount of content specifically on that. So we'll go through that, but if there's additional parts that you're curious about or we don't get to, everything from your question, just chime in again and we'll go deeper. That works great. Thank you for asking it. Did somebody else have one?
Yes,
Yes.
I have a
Yeah.
question. My
Great.
question was, yeah, basically, like, we live in an age where it's, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not, an expert in recruiting by any means, but from what I'm seeing is uh, there are a lot of algorithms that are actually pre-selecting resumes before they can get to the desk of recruiters nowadays. So you can have all the skills that you can be qualified for the job, but if you don't write your, those keywords in your resume, it might not be selected by the algorithm. So I'm looking at how can you, if you're writing your resume, how can you make sure that you are actually, touching on those key words?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Yeah, yeah.
I have another one, guys, if I may.
Yeah, please do.
Right. So my question is regarding the applicant tracking system, I guess. So from an HR perspective, are you guys more relying on on going toward automation to find out who is the best candidate? What is more of the trend from in your own world? So that's what I'm curious to learn.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I have a question too. My name is Musa. I want to know how you take your resume or your skills that you have from another job and transfer it to a completely almost different industry, and
Sure.
yeah, where you try to change your careers. That's what I'm most curious about.
Yeah, we can spend some time on that for sure. That's a great question. I bet a lot of people have that similar one too. So thanks for asking it. Any last questions? Otherwise, we'll dive in and see how much of the prepared content gets us.
I
Yeah.
have a
Oh, go ahead.
question. Hi, my name is Eve, and I'm a student. And my question is about the length of the resume. So, as a student, I've tried to tweak my resume a lot, and talking to different people, I've heard that for students it's really good for to just have like just a one-page resume. But at the same time, I hear sometimes with from other recruiters that it don't really matter. So like a two-page resume, as long as you have like a very good, consistent amount, consistent of project and like experience, it can just go on the resume. So what do we have to say about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's actually towards the beginning of our content. So maybe you're helping me transition into it here. So thank you for asking that, Eve. So here we go. At the highest level, let me know if you can see that. Okay, I think we're good. But okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Is it okay? Okay, great.
Yep.
Thank you. Just yell at me if you can't, and I'll assume we can. So at the highest level, the strongest resumes are in fact one page. I think, and the recruiters on the call today or folks that have done recruiting in the past can speak to this. We see a lot of resumes, high volume number of resumes come across our desks every day. And so the more efficiently that you can convey the key skills and, your proudest accomplishments at quick glance will be the most efficient way to get the resume to see the content and, go from there with next steps. So student or, really advanced career professional, one page in length is ideal. Clear and concise. So it's good to think about the words that you're using, that they aren't too specific to, inner language for the specific job that you had, and would be really versatile and easy to understand for somebody who isn't as close to the work as you were. Certainly highlight what you're most proud of. And then tailor. It should be customized for the job that you're going after. I know one of the questions was about industry change, and if you're shifting from one industry to the next, anchoring to the job description and the experiences and skills that you bring that sync up and connect to the job description will be ideal. Yeah, Dariel, I see you just wrote in the chat. Those types of words and the tailoring are what will, it sounds like somebody maybe came off mute.
Hey,
Someone have a question? Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah, Dar's point on the words and tailoring to the job description are how the algorithm will search. And so for the question related there, as much as you can have synergy between how you focus your resume and the job you're applying for, the better. I know at, first glance or at hearing that advice, it's a lot of work to create a resume, and it's a lot of work to tailor a resume for each job that you apply for, especially if they are different, majorly different jobs or skills needed. But it really will make the difference in the recruiter, finding you in the pool of candidates and reaching out to have a conversation. The advice I would offer as you're thinking about your resume, and we'll get into this in the working session too, but the top third of the document should really be attention grabbing. So if you are working on your one-page document that has your key experiences, great. Even focus more at the top third to make sure that, as like I said, recruiters are glancing at a stack of interested candidates' resumes, that the first third really grabs attention and jumps out. Any advice that others on the call would offer? I know we've got many, many years of experience here on this topic.
Pam, can I jump in really quick?
Yeah, please do.
I'm starting to type this, but I figured it's probably easier. Just a quick tip is, as I would absolutely agree, I think the investment on the front end to create a tailored resume for the role, for the company that you're applying for, is absolutely worth it. I would just recommend make sure that you are then finding a way to save those different variations of your resume in a way that is easily accessible, because, hopefully the goal is you get a call from a recruiter or a hiring manager to get to a point to go on site or, virtually and have an interview. And so you want to make sure that you have then the consistent resume from the beginning of the process through the end. So that's just my quick tip of however it works for you, just make sure that you find a way to save the different variations tailored to the companies that you're applying for.
That's a great piece of advice, Meredith. Thank you.
And I would add on to that, something I recommend to everyone is having like a master copy of your resume. So what I mean by that is having pretty much, don't limit yourself to one page, but put everything, like every accomplishment, whatnot, and then take that content when you're applying to a specific company or a role, and then it will help you to like tailor it and just copy and paste certain things from it.
That's a great idea, Uni. I love that. Okay, I know somebody specifically asked about how to organize your resume. And we'll share this deck with you after, so don't feel like you have to write down everything, but here's typically how you're gonna want to organize. Obviously your contact information at the top, and we'll wanna make sure that that is up to date if you've recently moved, or if you have a couple different phone numbers, making sure that you list the one that is most relevant for a recruiter, as well as email address. Overview of your education, and then getting into your work experience and technical skills. Activities, honors, awards, I would even take that to mean, philanthropy or volunteer experiences, community groups, all of those kinds of things that really round out the experiences that you bring, especially if you have leadership assignments and any of those extracurriculars, I'll call it. Some very into the weeds logistics on the resume, I would make sure that the font is very, very straightforward and easy to read. So as basic as possible, even if that might be a little more boring. If you have hyperlinks, making sure that they're clickable, so that as a recruiter's, pulling up the resume, it's very easy for them to click and see the information that you want to link for them. Double checking spelling and grammar, which is a great way to use our time today too, to make sure that everything is ready to go from that angle. And then I recommend saving as a PDF versus a Word document or otherwise, just so that when you send it over, nothing funny happens to the formatting. So I know some of that's really into the weeds, but as we talk about, some of the, I won't call them unwritten rules, but maybe some of the less obvious system things, I think the format one is an easy one. If you pull it up and can't read it and the information is formatted poorly, a recruiter might not have time to, roll up their sleeves and figure out what's trying to be conveyed. And so want to eliminate any things like that from causing a bump in the process.
As a super quick question for you, Meredith, because when I created this presentation, I do campus recruiting. So your education should be definitely at the top because that's where you're spending all your time and you're in school. Is that still the same though, Meredith, for professionals? Does that start to move down? I'd just be curious since we've got a blend of folks on the call.
Yeah,
Great question.
I think there's a little bit of flexibility with it depending on the types of roles that you are going after. So for example, if you have a degree in accounting and then you have your CPA and you've spent your career in the accounting track and you're applying for more, accounting or finance-based roles, I actually think it's relevant. If you have a degree like myself that is mainly more general communications, I think, and then you start to gain some professional experience, I actually think that you can use your best judgment to kind of put it down. I still think it should be on there, but it might not necessarily have to be the top thing that you see. So I know it doesn't give a clear answer, but I think the answer is it depends on what your educational background is, what experience you have on top of that, and then the types of roles that you're applying for. If it is aligned to kind of the career path that you want to take, or if you're looking to pivot and do something a little bit different, you might want to try different variations of the resume to see if you have kind of different hits or success one way or another.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Can I add on a few things too?
Yeah, please do.
So for the name and contact information, two things. One is make sure that you have an email that is somewhat of a professional email address. And number two, make sure that you have your voicemail connected and a more professional voicemail so that when recruiters do try to reach you, they're able to connect with you. We don't have time to try to 19 different ways to try to get a hold of you. So if your email bounces back or you don't have a voicemail that's set up, we're at a loss.
Those are great tips. Very easy to forget, but important to remember. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to keep going here. I think we're pretty clear on contact information. Here's some examples. And Darielle, who created this deck, is clearly a Harry Potter fan. I am not, and so this is less relevant, but my 8-year-old daughter is, so I know who Hermione is. But here's some examples of how you might just make it very straightforward, very professional looking, simple font, professional email, and the voicemail tip is a great one. So making sure that when somebody actually calls that number, the inbox isn't full, or the message isn't, something that you'd want a future employer to hear. For those that are closer to college level or more entry point into career, into their career, Eve, I think you mentioned that earlier. Here's a little bit more detail on how you might list out your education information. And like Meredith just shared, this will be more or less relevant depending on the job that you're going for and how closely your major or other college training syncs up with the job specifically. I too am a communications major, so probably wouldn't need to, broadly highlight that in a big way, and more so would list my information at the bottom of my resume. Here's some examples. There's a lot of ways that you can format. Again, simple, straightforward, easy to glance at to get the important components of the information is really what is most important. Nice GPA, Dar. Okay, as we get a little bit further into the experience component and thinking about jobs that you've had, we've talked a little bit about this, but the achievements that most closely fit the needs of the position. So if you're changing industries, this is where you'd want to find the common ground between the industry that you're leaving and the industry that you're going to and figure out what are those versatile skills. And it might be leadership, it might be maybe financial acumen is a transferable component across both that you want to make sure you anchor to so that the relevance of your previous background makes sense to the recruiter for the new job. I've included a link here. Action words are great. And I know sometimes personally, even when I've been sitting in a coffee shop working on my resume, I struggle to think of the exact word or I use the same word over and over. And so for a little bit of variety, this is a really great site that has some helpful verbs that will make your resume stronger. So that'll be live linked in what we send out. And then just going to include paid and unpaid relevant work experience, and that could be volunteer experience as well. Anything that builds skills and achievements that fit the position you're going after is what I would call relevant. Any questions on this one? Oh, go ahead.
And this, I think for folks on the call, is going to be that piece, or I guess if you take nothing away today, I'd say taking away like the research that goes into the different roles you're applying for. I think there's been questions about like, how do you transition between a new industry, or how do I get past that artificial intelligence algorithm? And it's going to be doing the legwork on the front end to see what is it in that job description that they're saying are key skills. So if you know you need to have great problem solving, experience with Excel, you need to make sure then that like, how do you think about your skills and past work experiences to make sure that that's coming out on the resume then? Because if you've used Excel but you don't have it on your resume and this job calls for it, you might get filtered out then because you haven't put it on your resume. So it's that legwork on the front end to say, what have I done and how does it match up to this job description? And that's also where it gets into that advice again that Uni shared about having that master resume save as and tweak, so that you're not always feeling like, oh, I have to go back and edit this resume again for this new job. You're doing the research by job and saving your resume as you go.
That's great. Okay, here's a little bit about how we would sequence. Oh yeah, I see a comment came in. Yeah, and the required experiences versus what is trainable. That's a good call out. We can talk a little bit about that too, and how you might augment for that in your resume wording as well. So reverse chronological order would be the recommended format. Relevant experience, I feel like I've already said that many times, but calling it out again. Calling out the name of the company and the dates that you work there, and then the key achievements from the role. Here's some examples of how, and this is a resume for a college recruiter, maybe Darielle's hypothetically at one point.
Yep, this is definitely from me back in the day. So
yes.
Yep, take this what you will, everyone.
But I think what's really great about these examples, you can see some of the very specific action words included. I love how Darielle had specific numbers around what she did, because I think that can give a frame for the scope and complexity of the experiences. So even if you feel like, well, I only trained 4 people, well, that's 4 different experiences of training that you provided. So getting credit for that and articulating it accordingly on the site, I think is really helpful. So numbers is a really good way to quantify experiences, and that could be number of projects managed, number of people led, number of whatever the meat of the job that you are doing includes. But numbers is a good way to articulate that. And then we've got some more examples. These might be a little bit smaller to see, but I think they give you a good sense for kind of that top section, if you're closer to graduation, including education up there, if it's super relevant. If not, you could always do the experience section first, and then additional experience, and then education. So you can kind of play with the flow based on the job that you're applying for. And then all of this is really kind of cleanly laid out. Here's where Dar worked, here were the dates that she was there, here's her job title, and kind of here's Dairy Queen, supervising, leading a team of 5. So even those experiences along the way, I think are good to sync up. You'll see that her most recent job is at the top, and the job, her oldest or first job, is towards the bottom.
Emily, one of the questions that came in was about, the Microsoft Office experience. So seems like that's a pretty basic requirement nowadays. Is it beneficial to list on the resume, or should you only do so if the position you're applying for specifically requires it?
My perspective on that would be it doesn't hurt to include it if you have the space. If it means you go to 2 pages to include it, I might think differently, but I would love some thoughts from the group given everybody's experiences.
I'd say it goes into the research you're doing on the company you're applying for. So for example, my husband works for the federal government. If he's applying to a role and he doesn't include specific things like whether it's Microsoft Office or other systems he needs to know, his resume won't even be considered and move forward. Whereas I think something like, maybe I'm going to speak on behalf of Target because that's where I work, little less concerned, because maybe in the back of my mind I just assume it's so ingrained in our lives now to be using some of those tools. So it gets back to that research piece of the different companies you're applying to.
I like that tip, Uni, that you put in the chat, jobscan.co. We'll add that to the deck as a resource when we send this out. That's awesome.
I'm learning something. I've never used that.
That's great.
Uni.
Skills and certification. So thinking again about the relevancy, there are a lot of online even, or in person, maybe online today, someday in person again, certifications that you can get, be it related to project management, business, healthcare, etc. And it's good to note those on your resume towards the bottom. So kind of in that other section. And that's where you're going to want to highlight specific things that you bring versus more general skills tailored to the job description. Activities, honors, awards, again, should just be relevant and significant. And then a good final review. So a tip that I like to offer is read your resume out loud. Are there parts that feel really succinct and clear and straightforward? And are there other parts that feel a little bit wordy or maybe not as clearly explained? Sometimes doing that exercise to read it out loud to yourself can help you identify those parts. Ask your friends and family to review it. Ask us to review it like we will today. It's always good to get a second set of eyes or even a couple sets to get a different perspective and make sure to share the job that you're applying for so that the reviewer can assess to make sure it syncs really nicely with that job. A couple of questions to ask yourself. Does your resume support the objective that you're going after? And would you hire this person's resume that you're reading for the job? I included a link here to this site as I was preparing for today. It was just one of the best sites I've found that had great resume advice. If, a year from now you've forgotten this deck or filed it away and can't find it, if you can favorite this site on your computer, you'll be able to easily reference it and remind yourself of some of the advice that we talked about today. Wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything. I think those are the primary tips. I did want to address cover letters. I think there's a lot of mixed perspectives on cover letters, and some people feel strongly that you should include them, and other people, I'll put myself in the other bucket, don't even look at them. So I think it might be something helpful as you're preparing for the job. If you get a moment, let's say you're at a career fair or a networking event with recruiters, to ask the recruiter that you're connecting with, like, do you value one? Should I include? Because it can save you a lot of time on something that might not even be reviewed if it's a recruiter like me that doesn't tend to look at them. Anybody on the call from a recruiting or HR standpoint that really values a cover letter or would have advice on when you should include them?
I was going to say, no, I agree with you. I think that it's a lot of work, but I think in lieu of it, something, especially if somebody has a lot of professional experience, I sometimes find just a summary or a brief statement at somewhere in the resume that points me towards your objective and a little bit about kind of who you are and what you bring that will help only highlight further the experience you put in the resume. Sometimes goes a long way. So it's not a full-blown cover letter, but it's like 2 sentences maybe at the top to trigger and bring me into like who you are and what you're looking for, what you can bring.
I like that idea, Mary. I think sometimes you'll hear that referred to as a career objective. And it can be just a couple sentences on a personalized statement for why you are the best candidate for the role. I had that slide in the deck and it looks like it got hidden for some reason, so I'll include it on what we send out, but it's exactly what Mary said. Just a quick headline on a couple sentences, no more than 3, to customize what your resume brings to the job and the employer, so they can quickly glance at it and get what they might have gotten from reading a long cover letter, but in the, glance of an eye.
Yeah, again, it'll come down to your research. I think there'll be industries and places where they still want them. I feel like sometimes nonprofits still really want to see a cover letter. But I think the rule of thumb is if somebody's not asking for it, you're not going to get brownie points for writing the cover letter. It's probably just going to go unread with as we're reviewing the applications, unfortunately. So, and then the career objective, I'm glad I think that we were chatting about that, because I think somebody had a question about switching industries. That could be a great line to explain why you're considering, like why you're making the jump from, HR to supply chain. It's like one of our volunteers on the call day did.
Yeah, that's a great call.
I was
We'll
going to
include-
say,
Oh, yeah,
I was
go
going to
ahead.
say too, I've heard that cover letters should be used. For example, we might have some folks who, when they were moving, especially if you're moving countries, you might have a break in your resume, right? So would a cover letter be a good way to explain breaks in your resume or other things that might be kind of a red flag for recruiters?
It's a good question. What do people think?
I think you could probably accomplish that with the objective at the top. Similar to making career transitions. I think you could cover it there.
This is Tracy, and I agree 100%. I don't typically look at them because I feel like it's resume 2.0, and like you have to tailor it so much to exactly why you want to come to my company and what you bring to this specific job that you end up just kind of putting the same stuff in two different documents. But I will say, don't feel like you can't do it. Just make sure that you tailor it specific to the job that you're going for.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
And then the chat, Bilha had a question about executive summary necessary. I think executive summary and career objective probably go hand in hand. It's that quick kind of snapshot of what you're looking for. Others feel free to chime in if I am missing something. There is something different with executive summary, but I view them as the same.
I'm going to just paste an example of one into the chat. We'll include this in the deck that we send out, but here's an example, psychology graduate, proven communication, travel planning, and email management skills, seeking a position as a project manager at the company they're applying to leverage the skills to support. Like, I think it's still pretty high level because you want it to be just kind of a quick snapshot. Here's what you bring. Here's what you're looking for. Here's why your experience is relevant. And then the resume is obviously the reveal of the full breadth of experiences that this is summarizing. Good questions. We actually are officially into our Q&A portion here. So we'll do any additional questions for the next 10 minutes or so. And then Leah has been working diligently behind the scenes to get us all paired up into breakout rooms where we can do some of the real actioning against feedback on your resumes or questions that are on your mind specific to a unique situation. Any other questions that folks haven't asked before we do the breakout rooms?
Just a reminder that most everyone is on mute. So if you'd like to ask a question,
Excuse me.
Unmute yourself or you can put it in the chat.
Perfect.
Hello, hi. Excuse me.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Yannick Zakra, and I have a question regarding the format of the resume. Do you guys have favorite either like Word format or PDF format, like whenever you send your resume to the recruiter?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say PDF is the most seamless and prevents any formatting issues as things, transfer on the internet wires. I know that there's no wires, but you know what I mean. And so I would vote PDF.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I
think that's a great example of a very specific but important question. So there are no bad questions here. If you feel like what you're asking is kind of, logistically simple or whatever the case might be, all questions are good questions. So feel free to fire them out.
This is Mamadi again, Mamadi Kone. I have a question. So if you have 3 pages of, your resume is 3 pages, is it better to have your name on each page? Because I've seen that. I have not done this, but does that help you recruiters to have your name to make, on each pages, or to number the pages of your resume? What's your take on that?
I think name on each would be great. I think you'd want to have a really good reason why you would have 3 pages, Mamadi, just because it's a little bit longer. But if you feel like you've rigorously narrowed and 3 pages is the right length, name on each page, just so it's like a little small header on the page 2 and 3, that works great.
And I think you're getting into a good thing, because there are some industries that require you to have a CV. Like if you're going into academia, like they do kind of expect you to have like a 3-page resume that has like where you've been published, like what you've taught. So I always like to see name on top, because even though everything's digital now, like it's still like, what if, I don't know, like I printed it and I lost one page. It's nice to have it still there. Yeah.
Thank you.
I had a question with regards to formatting again. So would you suggest that a resume has PowerPoints, so if that makes sense, or if they're just like phrases? I've seen resumes where the different like points under experience are in a bullet point, and then I've also seen it where it's phrases. So would you suggest it be phrases, or what's this? Oh my God, what's the word for the points?
A bullet
Just
point?
kind of like the bullet
points,
examples
yes.
on this.
Yes. Yes.
I think bulleted phrases works great. I think it's succinct and clear to kind of tick through and get the highlights easily. Longer kind of paragraph form or sentences might be more difficult to take a peek at efficiently. Anybody else have a different point of view?
I agree. I think the bullet points allow you to then start with those action words, and it keeps it nice and tight.
I would agree. I think the bullets are nice because very honestly, we are skimming, resumes. So we're not reading full paragraphs. We're looking for, particular skills or action words. So I think bullet is best, the most clear and concise you can be. That way, when we're skimming through your resume, we're picking up those keywords.
Yeah, that's a great point, Kelly.
The only thing I would add, and this is a little bit of a nuance, but I think sometimes in more creative spaces, like I have seen some resumes do some really interesting and creative things with specific like technical skills, where you can illustrate those in different ways than just words on a page, right? And so, but I'm putting a huge asterisk next to that because it doesn't apply to every industry or field. But if you are in a more creative space, sometimes something that is a little more visual appealing or formatted differently goes longer way than a traditional resume like you're seeing in front of you here.
I think that's a great point, Mary. Like a marketing candidate or user experience or some of those more visual profiles would likely do something a little bit less straightforward than what we're sharing today. It's a great point.
I think it's helpful just to have some perspective that for any role you're applying for, you could be one of hundreds of candidates. And so the idea of putting together these bullet points to put together succinct, clear statements are really for your own benefit, so you can get to the eyes of the recruiter or the hiring manager as quickly as possible, so it doesn't get lost in the shuffle. Because we might have, let's say out of 200 resumes, there might be 50 that are absolutely qualified to do the job, but how do you make sure that it's your resume that's getting the first look from the people that matter?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always give the advice, like, I feel like use your resume as a way to entice the reader to want to learn more. This is your first introduction to a hiring team. And so like, it should be accurate of your experience, but if you can make it enticing, right? Because to Meredith's point, like there are potentially hundreds of resumes in the same cluster as yours for one job. And so anything you can do to make it enticing is definitely going to set you apart.
Mm-hmm.
Emily, I've got one other kind of comment, I guess, from the business
world. For it.
I think there are a few things that seem like the majority of businesses are looking for, which are having leadership or just that kind of quality of a person. So any place where, and I mean leadership not in a very technical sense of having someone report to you, but rather just that natural ability to just lead your peers, or just having those abilities. So the leadership is a big one. And then data analytics, especially in my world right now, is such a hot commodity that if you have anything related to being able to analyze or think critically, those are just really good skills that you should highlight as a part of your accomplishments.
Yeah, that's great, Kelsey. Good specific points. I'm also seeing a good amount of questions on volunteer experience and if it's worth including on your resume. And it looks like universally, and I completely agree, absolutely include it. I think that shows a different side of your experience and skills that could be what sets you apart. If a lot of the applicants have similar work experience. And so showcasing that and finding a way to articulate the experience that you, so if you lead a group like WeNetworkNow, call that out. Like, that's huge and really important to get credit for and include on the resume. Lots of
Emily,
chatter. Yeah, go
Emily,
ahead, go for it.
If I include those, then my resume will be 4 pages. Is that
Uh-oh.
okay?
Well, I guess we'll have to do smaller font.
Okay.
Mommy's gonna need a lot of one-on-one time with his resume. Just FYI.
Okay, this is gonna be a challenge. I like it. Good questions, everybody.
I mean, to that point, though, there are some creative things you can do with the formatting in a Word document to make better use of the page. So, you know, playing with the margins and font type can go a long way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good point.
I'll just interject here, since I am trying to keep us all on time and make sure that we have the last 30 minutes of our assigned time to get that one-on-one time. So if anyone has any last follow-up questions for the whole group, if you could type them into the chat, I'll keep an eye on that. But as I'm watching the chat, I'll explain how the breakout rooms are going to go. So we have an excellent number of participants today. We have 2 participants assigned to every 1 HR professional. So once I'm done speaking here, you should get a little invitation at the bottom of your screen saying you're being invited to a breakout room. Please accept that invitation, and then it will be the 2 webinar attendees paired with 1 HR professional. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is an excellent time. If you do have your resume on your computer, I've enabled the share screen button for everyone. So you can pull up your resume and share it with the HR talent in the breakout room, and they can go through it with you line by line. This is a fantastic opportunity that these folks have volunteered their times to help you. I've been, you know, around the professional world in Minnesota for 15 years, and I rarely get this opportunity to speak with HR talent directly about my resume. So we thank the folks who volunteered today. This is an incredible opportunity. So I will be opening the rooms very soon here. Just a technical note, I see there are 1 or 2 people who've kind of been dropping off and coming back in. Maybe there's some connectivity issues. So if you do see someone disappear from your breakout room, I will be trying to add them back in as soon as they're able to connect. So it's just a couple of folks that might have a few connectivity issues. So just a little technical aside. I don't see any other questions coming in through the chat. One more technical aside, there are a couple folks on the participant list who may not have audio. So if that's you, please type your questions in the breakout room into the chat. If you don't have the ability to ask questions via audio, please still participate, use the chat feature, and we'll make sure to get your questions answered. Whenever you're done with your breakout sessions, there will be an exit room at the bottom. You'll be given 2 choices. You can either exit the meeting completely, or you can go back to the main session. Please, if you would, come back to the main session. I will be there. I'll have just a little exit survey, a little exit information for you. Nothing that will last very long, but I just wanted to check in and make sure that everyone got what they were looking for from today's presentation. So without
really quickly, before we go into the room, Sidra had a great point in the chat. If you're having connection issues, turn off your video, and that might help. If your video works for your connection, wonderful. It's nice to see faces, but if you need to turn it off, that's completely fine if it makes the conversation more effective. So little advice there. Thank you, Sidra.
That is an excellent point. So, and then I also wanted to mention too that Mamadi will be kind of floating between some of the rooms. He may pop in just to make sure everything's going okay. So if you see him pop in, he's just saying hi. So feel free to exit the main session at any time if you're having technical issues or you have any questions for me. I will be there. So without any further ado, thank you again to everyone who volunteered, everyone who's here to learn. I'm going to go ahead and open all the rooms. You'll see a little message at the bottom of the screen to just accept the invitation to the breakout rooms.
Emily, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Before you, so Emily and colleagues, so if maybe we have folks that do not have their resume at hand, but they would like to do some follow-up. Is they okay, after the workshop, maybe in the coming days,
Yeah, absolutely. I think for any folks that you hear from or that weren't able to make it today, just reach out to me and I will help pair them with somebody. We had actually more people that wanted to help today and were out of town. And so they said they'd be more than happy to do some one-on-one conversations after the workshop. So that works great.
Yeah, and I wanted to echo what Leah said. Thank you, guys. This really means a lot to us. You have no idea, what the differences that you are making right now in people's lives. So especially during this time when people are trying to transition from careers to career, they don't know how to format their resume. They don't know how to, where to start. So thank you. And actually during the COVID, I had to, even though I work in cyber, I had to, review my resume to make sure to get ready in case something happened. So this is very, very beneficial. And now, I wish I had this when I first came to the US. I would have been the CEO by now. If I had this, but I didn't get that opportunity.
Well, thanks for having us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.